Okay, almost there in terms of our form, and let's just go back to VS Code so that we can hook this back up to be able to actually submit it and update our database. So we'll go back to the activity form. Let's just close the others to tidy things up at the top. And we're going to re-enable our handle submit function. We don't need the handle change anymore. This can go now. And what we'll do is we'll just uncomment the handle submit. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the activity here as a parameter. So we'll pass in activity into the handle submit, and we'll say activity. And what we'll do, actually, just to be a bit clearer, we'll say handle form submit. We'll change the name of this method. And down in the Formik properties, where we've got our onSubmit method, instead of console.log the values, we'll say handle form submit and pass in the values, which is going to be an activity. The rest of this can stay the same, although what we'll do is just above the form itself is we'll just add a header, and we'll say header, and we'll say the content equals activity details, and we'll make it a subheader, and we'll give it a color equal to teal. And we'll also place another header inside the form itself, just above the location details. And we'll just paste this in here, and we'll just say remove activity, and we'll just say location details. What we also want to do is disable the submit button if the form is not dirty, or the form is not valid, or if the form is being submitted. And we can get these props and pass them down to our form from Formik. So as well as the handle submit here, we'll check to see if the form is valid, or is submitting, or dirty. And we can use these properties in our button here. So I'm just going to move things down a bit. And we'll add a disabled flag, and we'll say this is disabled if is submitting, or not dirty, or not is valid. And if we go and take a look at our form now, we should find that everything is hooked back up to our API. So if I refresh this page and I'm editing an activity, and let's say past activity 1, we'll change it to past activity 11. If we click submit, we should still get the loading flag and be taken to our activity, and this should be persisted in our database. So if I refresh this page, then we see past activity 11. If I go back to the activities, then we can see that this has been updated everywhere. Great. And if I take a look at creating an activity, we can see the submit button is disabled. And if I just say test Formik activity as the title, and just say test, and then pick a category, and then pick a date, and say 21st and 12:30 p.m. and we'll just say test, and test as location and venue, then the submit button becomes available. If I remove any of these, then it becomes unavailable until I add it back in. And one thing that we didn't test actually is what happens if we leave the date blank, and aha, we get quite a nasty validation error there. So let's put the date back in and just submit this to our API just to make sure that works, and it does. But what we'll do is we'll just go back to our form, and where we've got the date validator, we'll actually put a message in, and we'll just say date is required, so that we don't see the nasty full text that we saw there. And if we go back and we manage the event and we take out the date and click away, well, we get a different kind of validation error. Aha. Now that's not quite what we're looking for. And what we can do to get around this is just to follow the guidance here. If null is intended as an empty value, be sure to mark the schema as nullable. And it's purely because we've got the date as null here, and we're going to let this be nullable. So what we'll do is we'll add a period, and then we'll specify nullable. And then this is still going to be required, but we're not going to see the nasty long string of text. And if we go back and take a look, let's just refresh the page, make sure the change has been picked up, and if we clear the date and we click away, then we get date is required, and then we can select a date and the validation goes away, and we can submit, and everything's good in the world. Now let's take a look at our console. We've come to the end of this particular section, and we just want to remove any of these nasty warnings before we commit our changes into source control. And just in our activity form, we've got a few warnings inside there. So let's take a look, and what we'll do, we'll just come up to the top, use the quick fix, and delete all unused declarations. And if we go back and refresh our page, we should get a nice, clean console. And we do. And we've now implemented Formik into our application. So let's go back to VS Code, and we'll save our changes into source control. So let's just stage them, and we'll say end of section 11, Command and Enter, and then we're just going to push these on up to GitHub. And we'll wrap this up with a summary.